Am I on? Am I on? Yep. So, good morning, everybody. When I listen to Tony, I sort of feel like I'm back at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and the wonderful theorists are talking, and us who work in systems and practice have to figure out, like, okay, what do you do, right? What do you do? So, and the book, Tony's book, we did a book club on it, and fabulous stuff. Right, absolutely fabulous stuff. And what we're trying to figure out now in Montgomery County is, so what? So what do you actually do about it, right? And that's what I want to sort of share with you this morning. And I'm also, someone on the video just said something that reminds me of one of my favorite, if not my favorite piece on education, which is James Baldwin's Talk to Teachers in 1963, I think he wrote it. And I paraphrase, because he's got a long quote, but he said, the purpose of education is to ask questions of the universe and learn to live with those questions. Right? He says a lot of other things in there too, but I highly recommend it. The purpose of education is to ask questions of the universe and learn to live with those questions. Right? And in many ways, when I think about the work that Tony describes, when I think about the work that we have to do in the 21st century, we have to help our kids not just bubble in tests, or actually not bubble them in at all, but ask questions and then learn to live with them. In order to live with questions, you need to have a high degree of social emotional well-being, as well as strong academic skills. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that this morning. But I'm going to start by talking, I hope, which way should I be pointing this? Or, it's coming up? Oh, there we go. I'm going to start by talking about seltzer. I love seltzer. Anybody like seltzer? I love seltzer. Seltzer with lime, one of my favorite things. It's just something I love. And if you think about the way we've traditionally got seltzer, right? It's from a cartridge, and someone has to fill it up for you. That's the way seltzer, club soda has always been created. And then along came drink makers who said, well, let's bottle it. So you can go to the store and you can buy seltzer just like you can buy soda, you can buy apple juice, whatever it may be, right? And then came one of my favorite inventions of the 21st century, the soda stream. Does anybody have a soda stream? Right, I love my soda stream. Right? I mean, I love it. You can make, you can put flavors in it. You can make it really bubbly. You can make it not bubbly, whatever you want to do, right? And because I like seltzer, we get a lot of use out of my soda stream. Seltzer has been completely democratized. So if you're a drink maker, right? If you're a drink maker and you actually, when I lived in Brooklyn, there was a truck that used to come around that filled up seltzer bottles, the cartridges, right? That is no longer a job that's going to pay a lot anymore. If you're a drink maker, or if you're a seltzer maker, and you don't have other options for drinks, and people are buying soda streams, your future is decreasing. So we in education have to think about our work in the same way, right? Information, as Tony describes, has been democratized, right? No longer is the banking method of education where the teacher has the knowledge and deposit it into the child's head effective, right? We can now, through our devices, right, access information in ways that were never possible before. You can use it to pick fights with strangers, you can use it to look at videos of cats, but essentially, right, it's being used to just spread information. So our challenge now, in a system of 150,000 kids, 22,000 employees, right, is to reorganize systems of adult learning to impact on how students interact with information. And this is the fundamental problem that we're facing in education today that I'll talk about in a minute. And the question that I ask our folks all the time, if you can Google it, why teach it, right? If you can Google it, why teach it? And what does that then mean for what a teacher does with a student every day in the presence of content? What does it mean for the task you're asking them to perform? That's the fundamental change that we have to organize systems around. So just briefly, many school systems these days are struggling with enrollment growth and enrollment decline, changing demographics. I'll share a little bit about Montgomery County. And when people talk about, when they address Tony's question, what's the problem, they think about this. They think about enrollment. They think about demographics. Well, it's the kids, right? We have more English language learners, whatever it may be. And those are certainly issues. You can see how the demographics in Montgomery County have changed over time, but that's not the fundamental problem we're facing. The fundamental problem is the democratization of information. So Montgomery County, we are like the rest of America. We've been increasingly Our demographics have been changing, while we've also been growing by 2,500 kids a year. Our poverty rates, our English as a second language rates, all increasing, right? All increasing, much like many, many other districts in the country. But we find ourselves now in this time where we have these changed demographics, right? For us, we have increasing enrollment, and we're moving from an incredibly rigid system of what school should look like. And we're moving towards a system that should look very different. So what do you do in the middle? That's where I think the work that this conference is about, the work that Gallup is doing, the work Tony's describing, gives us the best opportunity we've had in a generation to redefine the system as well as what it is kids need to know and be able to do. So we have this national landscape that's changing. We all know NCLB is dying a slow death, No Child Left Behind. Some of the conversation on the floor of the Senate, I think it's getting to the floor of the House actually this week, is really problematic. The idea that there should be more local control, actually I have concerns about, because pre-No Child Left Behind, we know what local control wrought, and it wrought the incredible disparity in outcomes for black kids, Latino kids, poor kids, special ed kids. We cannot go back, right? We cannot go back to the idea that local elected officials can make determinations, will be the sole determinations about who should get what. And remember, before No Child Left Behind, and I have a lot of problems with No Child Left Behind, too much of that was allowed, and it really hurt generations of children. But we now know ESEA is being reauthorized. We have this new teacher evaluation processes and systems going on where we are being forced to do a really stupid thing that doesn't actually work, which is link individual student test scores to teacher evaluations. It's bad science, right? Actually, if you look at today's Baltimore Sun, my colleague Renee Foose, superintendent of Howard, has a great, and she's here today, Howard County, Maryland, has a great piece about the mismatch going on in Maryland right now. It just doesn't make any sense. However, what it has done is sparked some conversation about supervision. If you focus 95% of your time on supervision, the evaluation almost writes itself, right? So unfortunately, the way the reform community or so-called reform community is pushing this out there is that if we somehow hold people accountable at the end and great things will happen, I'd rather invest up front in having great models of supervision and coaching. But at least we're having the conversation now. Common Core state standards, I think we all know about. At least we're going to have a national standard and national tests, and we'll be able to do some comparisons, right? There are going to be major problems with implementation, with funding, but we're now talking about a common unified standard, and it's a great opportunity for us. And then, of course, the new assessments will come out, which are, we have not yet fully seen. I don't know that they will live up to their promise. I don't think they'll be funded in ways that they should be in order to live up to their promise, but at least we're starting down that road. So let me give you a sense of the shift that's going on. This is a current question on the Maryland State Assessment for grade 5 division. Art teacher has 824 paintbrushes. He wants to put 8 brushes in a box. Straight up division, right? This is what kids are tested on regularly, right? Looks pretty similar. It actually looks pretty similar to this, which I collect old textbooks. This is a book from a math textbook from 1861, not 1874, but regardless. And on page 49, question 29. A township of 876,136 acres is to be divided among 8 persons. How many acres will be the portion of each? Not very different from 824 paintbrushes by 8 kids. 1861 to 2012, right? Pretty similar in how we're testing kids in long division. This is a sample of a 4th grade, one grade earlier, Common Core aligned assessment, the sample item. And I won't go through this whole thing, but 3 classes are going on a field trip, right? The table shows the number of people in each class, so you have to be able to read the table. They can choose to use either of the 3. Which 3 combinations So no longer does the child just answer one question, right? They actually have 3 combinations. The complexity of this is far greater than 824 paintbrushes, 8 kids, how many? A grade earlier. That's the Common Core, right? I think this is great. I mean, I think this is fabulous. This is exactly what we want kids to do. But how do you reorganize systems of 12,000 teachers in Montgomery County, right? 202 principals, right? Tons of assistant principals, curriculum. How do you reorganize systems to actually make that happen so that we don't just show these wonderful videos like Tony does, or say there's a school that does it and then decry the fact that nobody else does it, right? That's not acceptable. You actually have to get everybody to start doing it. So let me share with you some of what we're doing. We have a new strategic planning framework. It is 1 page. I have some copies of these. All of this is on our website, by the way. We had in Montgomery County one of the best strategic plans, highly recognized, copied by others. I got to the district and I said, you know, we have so much data, it's fabulous. I've never seen so much data. We've articulated every single action that everybody should do. Can you please tell me the 5 indicators that tell us whether we're doing well as a system? Right? And nobody could. So I asked my team to boil it down to 1 page. Get it down to 1 page. Because I actually don't need a strategic plan. I need a plan for strategic thinking. I don't need a strategic plan. Right? I need strategic thinkers in the organization. And it's a framework. So the idea now is that folks will use this in the central office and use this in schools and other places to organize their work that meets holds us to certain parameters about what kids should know and be able to do and what adults should do to get them there. And I'll show you some examples in a minute. But it's within a framework, and it's part of what should be happening in the school community, right? Because every school community is a little different. A couple other key pieces of it. One is, of course, Montgomery County, our vision, we aspire to be the best, right? We feel that I got to the system 2 years ago, and it's a well-regarded system, and people want to keep it that way, right? So we're very competitive, and we're going to stay that way. But our mission has changed. You know, I've said to folks that Montgomery County, in many ways, is the first district to get to the moon in terms of our student achievement. And you know, I can share with you all of our great achievement data. But now we have to go to Mars. And are the same things that got you to the moon going to get you to Mars? Well, so that makes me think, of course, about NASA and what our mission is. NASA's missions change. They always do space exploration. Their core purpose is always going to be exploration. But whether it was getting to the moon, putting a man on the moon, whether it's the Hubble spacecraft, whether it is the Shuttle Challenger, the mission changes. Despite the flowery rhetoric on the websites of every single school and district in this country that says they will promote the artistic and creative problem-solving skills of every kid, the mission of every school in America for the last 13 years has been make AYP. Regardless of what they say, it's been make adequate yearly progress, right? That's gone away. So now we have this opportunity to say, what's our new mission? So for us, it's about academics, it's about creative problem-solving, and it's about social and emotional well-being. And then the other piece is the core purpose. When I think about what we do as educators, there's a fundamental core purpose that will never change. We prepare kids for their future, not our present, their future. And if information has become democratized, and if the jobs of the 21st century 2030, 2040, 2050 have not been invented yet, how do you prepare kids for their future? Not our present, but their future. When you're still being asked to test them on an old model. That's the challenge before us. So I will briefly sort of flip through some of this, and again, I'm not going to go through all the language, but we've organized, again, around 3 competencies. They are equivalent. I would like to think, I think we are the first district that has elevated social and emotional well-being to be equivalent to academics and creative problem solving. I do think that the academics and the creative problem solving will become unified over time because they're very similar, but for now, we separate them out. And let me give you some examples. And again, I'm not going to read all these. But what I love about our framework, and again, I have copies, it's also on our website, is that we articulate what kids should know and be able to do. Specific. And you cannot organize change. The tragedy of the reform movement of the last 10 years is that the conversation has not been about what you want kids to do, right? It's just been about how you want them to test, right? So we've said this is what we want kids to do. The other step we've taken is what staff will do. So very clear points about what we expect staff to do, not only kids, but staff. So now I've got to organize all these systems for adult learning. And you know, adults can't learn more than about one thing at a time, right? Really, you don't learn new things as an adult more than about one at a time. And we're asking our teachers and our leaders and our central office folks, even our boards of ed, to learn new things all the time. But they can't really learn more than once. So more than one at a time. So I'm hoping that this is going to provide us some much needed focus, but also organize our systems around adult learning. We do not have a student learning problem in America today. Kids know how to learn. We have an adult learning problem, right? I've never met a teacher, a good teacher, who isn't interested in learning and growing and getting better. It's up to us to organize systems around it. So again, I won't go through all these, but we're trying to really be explicit about what it means to be a creative problem solver and what staff will do as well as kids. And then finally, the social emotional piece, which is one that I am perhaps most passionate about. We've articulated that as well, and we're measuring it. So let me talk a little bit about how we are measuring all this. We've decided on 5 milestones, right? I said before, you need 5 things that tell you how well you're doing. When you go to the doctor, right, what do they do? Take your blood pressure, right, your weight, your temperature, whatever it may be. And then if there's an issue, you have these vital signs. If there's an issue, you may run another test. You know, Josh, your blood pressure's high. Superintendent of schools, it's obvious why it would be, right? But your blood pressure's high, let's run some more tests. Well, so for us, we've decided let's organize ourselves around 5 milestones. And I want to point out in them that we're using the Gallup measures of hope, engagement, and well-being as key accountability measures for us. One is 3rd grade reading, because we know that if kids are not reading in 3rd grade, their chances of succeeding in school and in life decrease. So schools must be accountable for 3rd grade reading, right? Got to look at 2nd grade, got to look at 1st grade and kindergarten, but the accountability is 3rd grade. The next is both 5th and 8th grade. At the end of 5th and 8th grade, are you ready for the next level, right? Are you ready to go into middle school with a good sense of who you are, right? That's where we're looking at some of the social emotional factors, as well as, of course, the academics, the academics that you need, the academic skills you need to be successful. 9th grade success, because if you're not successful in 9th grade, your chances of graduating decrease. If you do graduate, it's quite likely that you will have to remediate, right? And your chances of dropping out increase significantly if you're not successful in 9th grade. And then, of course, graduating college and career ready. So what we're trying to do is organize ourselves around the idea that there are these 5 key milestones. The state is still going to make us take, and the feds are still going to make us take annual tests. I don't care about those measures, right? I really don't, other than if they tell the school community something about their kids. So it might be that you see in 6th grade or 7th grade, English language learners are really struggling with something. So you use it for support, you use it for development, but the accountability is in 8th grade. That's how we're trying to shift our focus. This is an example of some of the way we're using Gallup, and we have, and you can go on our website, we have a report for every single school. Right, a detailed report for every school on the student's sense of hope, well-being, and engagement. And what Brandon said was dead on. So it was great when I saw the Gallup data that shows the incredible decline of kids' engagement. I tell my folks all the time, after I visit a lot of schools, right? And I love going to elementary, middle, and high school in the same day. As kids get older, their independence decreases. It is shocking. And when you do it in one day, over this course of a couple hours, and you see elementary kids playing and moving, you see middle school kids squirming, and you see high school kids writing, right, just copying. It's amazing to see. So it's completely consistent with the data that Brandon mentioned earlier. Now we're starting to reorganize how we're doing it. So let me give you one example of how we're reorganizing ourselves. Jessica Medrano is one of our, I think she just graduated from Wheaton High School, and there's a case we did, Jessica and the case of the dead pig, right? We all know that we have to learn dissection in high school, right? What Wheaton High School, and let me also just tell you the demographics of Wheaton, 18% English language learners, 50% free and reduced lunch. 79% of the kids had been on free and reduced lunch at some point in time, and it is about 25% black, about 50% Latino. We're rebuilding the school. We're turning it into a full problem-based learning high school, kind of like a high-tech, high-type model, with also enormous resources for the community because it's one of our neediest communities. So the way that Jessica and her team did dissection was they had to figure out what killed a pig, right? And if you remember how you did dissection, right, probably the teacher, you did it, maybe you had your partner, and you had to cut open whatever, a frog, pig, whatever it might be. Well, Jessica and her team had to do an autopsy and figure out what killed the pig. It's just a small example of a problem. As she describes in her testimony around it, oh, and by the way, a puncture wound killed the pig. That's what they figured out. But a team of kids had to research it. They had to work together, right? They had to dissect together and come up with conclusions. And what she said was, you know, my friends can help me out a lot more than some of my teachers. They explain things in ways that the teacher sometimes can't, right? There's a safe environment that's been created. So you're still learning dissection, but just by creating it as a forensic, scientist might have to do, you change what kids have to do, but it fundamentally changes what teachers have to do. Let me give you another example, and so we have Curriculum 2.0, which is our elementary curriculum in all schools. It's based on the thinking and academic success skills, again, all on our website. Academic, creative problem solving, critical. And it's organized around key questions that kids have to attend to in their work every day, right? So it's not just learning reading and then math and then writing. All the curriculum is integrated around thinking and academic success skills. And let me give you, and then kids have to be able to really reflect on who they are as learners. So actually, let me give you a short video that has our teachers describing it. So those are our teachers talking about the work that they have been doing with our kids. And what I want to leave you with, if this comes back on, I hope, what I want you to think about is we think about innovation and we think about change and we think about how to do this. I get concerned when people think of innovation as technology, right? Technology certainly has a component. Or when people think of something that has to be always outside of the schoolhouse. And in fact, it happens every day in classrooms if you do certain things, if you create conditions. Curriculum matters. Curriculum really matters. Professional development really matters, right? Accountability systems, measuring, all those things matter. It's not sexy stuff, quite frankly. It's really not. It's sort of nuts and bolts ways of organizing yourselves around what you expect kids to know and be able to do. And again, to me, that is the biggest failure of the reform movement of the last 12 years, is this complete absence of conversation about what we want to see kids do. Start there and build everything else around it. I'll leave you with a poster that I have in my office, and I can, I think Woody Guthrie is probably one of the great figures of the last century, right? But these words still hold true. Substitute the word song for policy, right? I hate a policy that makes you think that you're not any good, like the policies we've been dealing with in education for the last decade, right? And look at and this is just one part of the poster, but what he says, right, about what we need to do, I think, as educators. So I'm out to fight those songs or those policies to my last breath of air and my last drop of blood. I'm out to sing songs that will prove to you that this is your world, and that if it has hit you pretty hard and knocked you for a dozen loops, no matter what color, what size, how you are built, I'm out to sing the songs or create the instructional environments for kids that make you take pride in yourself and in your work. That's why we have to focus on hope. That's why we have to focus on well-being. Not instead of academic skills, but in complementing our academic skills, right? That's what I think we need to do. So please Go to our website. All this is on there. Follow me on Twitter, as always. I'm trying to boost my clout score as much as I can. Also on Instagram and Vine. The kids love Vine, man. It's really cool. But please go to our website, and we have copies of the framework as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you. You doing questions, or I don't know how much time we have. Okay. You just let me know when to get off the stage. I can't see that well, so there's a mic coming around.
You talked about holding schools responsible at 3rd grade.
Yep.
And, you know, I admire you and your work about Montgomery County Public Schools and everything. And I'm just wondering, how do you involve parents in the mix? Because a lot of times, you know, parents, they don't have the fluency to read, some parents. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, when they don't have that fluency, that's passed on in terms of reading to their children. So how do you address that in your schools?
So if I'd had more time, I would have gone into our school support improvement framework, which we're just launching, which takes a holistic view of school, of the conditions for success in a school. And it includes student outcomes, it includes leadership, it includes implementation, and it includes culture data, and part of that is parents. What's the school community doing to work with its parents, work with its families, and to meet them halfway in our common quest to help our kids be educated at a high level. We've also done a lot of work in just investing in community engagement. So I've hired a chief engagement and partnership officer who's not out of the education sector, but I want a community activist to really be working with communities. And we're really focused on interagency collaboration right now. We're about to launch some new things to work with other agencies that are touching, not literally, who are working with parents and families in ways that we may not be able to. So faith-based groups and social service agencies, so that we can kind of wrap services around families that are in need. That's how we're approaching it.
We have time for one more question.
My question is in regards to students who have been identified with a learning disability or ADD, ADHD. How has this model changed their outcome or their ability to be successful past your high school experience?
Yeah. So the anecdotal data that I'm hearing from teachers when I visit their classrooms, and I hear from principals and the special ed folks, is that it's working quite well at the elementary level with some of our students with special needs, because they're engaged in different ways, right? So they're not being asked to just sit there in the classroom and do what everybody else is doing, but they can be in small groups, they can be using technology. We've been finding that it aligns very, very well to meet the needs of kids with all different kinds of learning styles, as well as classifications. But we don't have the evidence yet. That's part of the problem we're facing in America today, and I'll stop here. This opportunity we have, given the fact that the old state tests are going away and the new tests are coming in, right? We've got this gap in the middle now to say, well, what do we want to do, right? What do we know is great practice for kids? What's the best possible thing we can do with each kid for 180 days of the year, 6.5 hours a day, right? We're educators, we actually know what we're doing. If we trust each other, I think we're going to get a much better outcome than if we just focus on the narrowness of the standardized tests. So, thank you.